Welcome to the Exploring Unschooling podcast. I'm Pamela Riccia, unschooling mom and author, bringing you interviews, information, and inspiration about unschooling and living joyfully with your family. You can find the episode show notes, your free Exploring Unschooling ebook, and lots more information at livingjoyfully.ca. And here's the show. Hi everyone, I'm Pamela Riccia, and this is episode number 18 of the podcast. It's the 4th of May, 2016, as I record this intro. In this episode, I asked Jennifer McGrail 10 questions about unschooling. Jennifer is a veteran unschooling mom to 4 awesome kids, ages 8 to 19, and we get to hear a bit about them and what they're up to right now. She's also a blogger and owner of the Facebook group, The Path Less Taken. In the episode, we talk about burnout and self-care, the disconnect between how adults treat other adults and how they treat children, the concept of natural consequences, hosting the Free to Be Unschooling conference, and much more. So a big thanks to Jennifer for taking the time to chat with me, and I think you'll really enjoy hearing what she shares. As an update this week, I'm happy to tell you that the Childhood Redefined Unschooling Summit I hosted this past weekend with Ann Oman went really well. It was definitely an intensive event, but we had an awesome group of people, and there was so much fun and learning and stretching and growing and joy. There's just something so inspiring about connecting with like-minded people, parents who deeply respect their children. I thought I'd share a couple of the many comments we've received so far. Sarah wrote, "Calling it a summit seemed sort of odd to me before we started. Now that I have had this experience, I feel that it is the most appropriate word. It was a journey to an incredibly high place. What I saw from that vantage point will forever shape the way I view my life and my relationship with my children. Thank you from the bottom of my heart." And Tina shared, "I must say it was so wonderful to have been at the summit. I feel like I have drunk from a fountain or even a fire hose this weekend and been refreshed with words and concepts that I know but need a reminder of sometimes, like a shot in the arm booster. And man, do I feel boosted." I too am inspired after spending the weekend with so many caring parents at all different points on their unschooling journey. It's so good. And this week, I want to share a quote from Marina DeLuca-Howard, which I found on Sandra Dodd's quote page. She writes, "Start with love and respect and all the good things follow. It is not magic and it is a lot of hard work, especially at the beginning." Marina is an unschooling mom from the Toronto area who I've met in person. She and her family came to the Toronto Unschooling Conference a few times over the years, and I always enjoy catching up with her and seeing the kids another year older. Her quote jumped out at me this week because it hits on something that Jennifer and I talk about quite a bit in this episode, that living together with our unschooling children absolutely does take time and effort. But the time and energy we choose to invest gives back to us in incredible and almost unimaginable ways. The connected and trusting relationships we build with our children are just amazing. So worth it. And now, on to the interview with Jennifer. Hi everyone, I'm Pamela Riccia from livingjoyfully.ca, and today I'm here with Jennifer McGrail. Hi Jennifer.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. Thanks very much for joining us. Jennifer, if you don't know, is an unschooling mom to 4 awesome children. She's the owner and writer of the Path Less Taken blog and Facebook group, and also the host of the Free to Be Unschooling conference in Phoenix, Arizona. I have 10 questions for you, Jennifer, so let's dive in.
All right.
The first question is, can you share with us a bit about you and your family and how you came to unschooling?
Well, we actually had no plans on unschooling or homeschooling at all. We were high school sweethearts and we got married at 18 and 19. And when we first became pregnant, I was working full time and I just assumed I'd go right back to work. Didn't think I'd be a stay-at-home mom. And then I had my first son, and once I saw him, everything that I thought I wanted to do went out the window, and I wanted to be home with him, and I didn't want to go back to work. And attachment parenting, which is something I'd read about when I was pregnant that sounded crazy, suddenly didn't sound so crazy anymore. And that was what I was naturally drawn to. And from the beginning, I just followed my instincts. And so from attachment parenting, he was still an infant, but I knew I didn't want him to, it didn't make sense to me to send him to school. And so I went to the library and got all the books, and I read John Holt, and it just clicked and it just made sense. And so for us, the parenting piece came first, and then it just naturally progressed into keeping the kids home and into unschooling and eventually radical unschooling. And we never looked back. He's 19 now, and we have 3 others, and we never looked back. It was just right.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, I hadn't heard of homeschooling or even attachment parenting here in Canada. It hadn't quite, hit when, my eldest is 24 now. But as soon as I found it, yeah, it just made so much sense, right? It just clicks.
Yeah, we knew when I grew up, there were some homeschoolers down the street from us, and they were really sort of radical. They lived in tents on their compound, and we kind of whispered about them. Oh, those weird.
Yeah.
That was the only exposure I'd had to homeschooling. And, who knew I would be here now?
Okay, let's move to question number 2. I definitely, and I'm sure our listeners too, would love to hear more about your unschooling kids, like what they're interested in right now, how they're pursuing it, and maybe how that interest came about.
Okay, well, my oldest, who's 19, he is right now sort of figuring out what he wants to do next. He just finished a small engine repair course, and he's the kid who, ever since he was a toddler, loved to take everything apart, put it back together again. We'd save all the old VCRs and things for him to just completely take apart, put back together. And as a 19-year-old, he still does that, but with weed whackers and lawnmowers and bigger things like that. He's not really sure if he wants to do that for a career. Right now, he's looking for just sort of a first job to get some money coming in. He's very active online. He runs a few Minecraft servers. He's very, very computer literate. All my kids are. They're the ones I go to for help.
Yeah.
But he's at an in-between place right now where he's deciding what he wants to do next. And what's awesome about unschooling is that he's able to do that with no pressure. We're not pressuring him. Oh, you're over 18 now. You need to figure it out. And I didn't know what I wanted to do then. So,
I know, right?
I'm glad that we're able to give him that time. And my 15-year-old, his big thing at the moment, he is in a band with some friends, kind of a long-distance band. The rest of the band members are in Michigan, and they practice over Skype when they're not together in person. And
wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. They performed together for the first time at the Free to Be conference last year. And since then, he's flown out to Michigan, and they've done open mic nights, and they've performed at birthday parties. And
that's awesome.
It is. It's been really cool for him. And I don't know. It's been a few years now since he started playing guitar. And I don't know what started it, but he was mostly self-taught. And then he decided he wanted to go to get professional lessons for a while. He did that for a few months to sort of refine his skills. And music is his thing. That's what he does with most of his time. He practices his guitar. They're writing their own music. So it's been really cool to watch how passionate he is about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he's doing. And my 12-year-old, actually today is his birthday. He turns 12 today.
Happy birthday!
Yeah, he's still sleeping. He won't be up for quite a few more hours. He is one of my kids who has loved to try everything. He's the one who has done the most sports and he's done scouts, and he's done gymnastics, and he's done karate, and he loves to try new things. And he'll do them for a while, and then he'll try another one. Right now, his big thing is football. He's been playing football for, I think, 3 seasons now, flag football. And he's loving that. and he can solve a Rubik's Cube in less than 30 seconds.
Oh, wow.
He's also very computer literate. He does a lot on the computer. He's busy. He's a busy 12-year-old. But yeah, his big thing right now is football. He's also very musically inclined. He plays the bass guitar just for his own pleasure. He's completely self-taught. He's self-taught on the piano. And then my 8-year-old, she's the one who keeps me running around. She's the only introvert in a family of 6. I'm sorry, extrovert. In a family of 6, she's the only extrovert. So that's been a big learning curve for me.
Yeah.
She loves to be around people, and she loves to be busy, and she also loves to try new things. Her big thing is performing of any sort. She loves to act, and she loves to dance, and she loves to sing. And she's in The Wizard of Oz right now, a local homeschool production of The Wizard of Oz. And she's a dancer. She, let's see, 2 years in a row now, she danced with the dance team cheerleaders for our local arena football league. There was like 10,000 people in the stands. And so she likes to drop that into conversation. That time I danced in front of 10,000 people.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, she's fun. She has taught me so much about parenting, just her personality, but also her having a girl after 3 boys. So it's been a whole new learning experience with her. It's been great. But yeah, they're busy kids. They're happy kids. But those are their big things right now.
Very cool. Question number 3. What has been one of the more challenging aspects of your unschooling journey so far?
So for me, I think it's been figuring out where my own self-care fits in. I tend to be an all or nothing personality, so I figured early on that it was very easy for me to make it all about the kids all the time, which, a certain amount of that you need to do to unschool well, but I had to realize that if I burnt myself out, that I wasn't any good to my kids or myself. So I had to figure out where I fit in the whole of unschooling, and how I could take care of myself and also be there fully present for the kids.
Yeah, that's a great point. I remember, struggling with that too. Well, and that's something that changes with time as well, right?
Definitely.
The things you find that re-energize, that's probably a good word, that re-energize you change over time, and also as they grow, because when they're younger, obviously, and they need more hands-on help, your moments for re-energizing, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out ways I could do it while I was still with them. Finding, if it was for me at the time, just a cup of tea while they were doing things, or, a little bit more quiet activity, or just going out for a walk. So they're looking at their things and I'm looking at my things, seeing the gardens and that kind of stuff, and how that changes over time. But it is an important part, because if we don't put our needs into the mix, part of learning out how to all live together, that's a really big piece of it, isn't it?
It is. And there seems to be sort of a push by society, almost like it's important for you to get away from your kids. Like my oldest was still just a baby, and people were like offering to babysit. Oh, guys should go out. You should go away for a weekend. You should. And it wasn't that I wanted to get away from my kids. I wanted to learn how to, like you said, take time for yourself and still be present for your kids.
Exactly. I can't remember how many times I was asked, oh, well, I'll look after the kids. You guys go do this. It's like, no, but that's not what I want either.
Right. It's hard. It's a balance. And I noticed for me, something that was huge was that my kids are all about 3.5 years apart. So once I had a toddler that was getting a little more independent, then all of a sudden I was pregnant, and then I had another new infant who needed me so much. And so for many, many years, it was that way. Then once my daughter, who was our last child, reached toddlerhood, I started to have almost like an identity crisis, because I thought, wait a minute, I'm not having another baby and she's getting more independent. I almost felt like I had lost myself. I had to refine the things that made me happy just for me. So it was a whole new, I had to think, did I used to have hobbies? And so, it was kind of a big growth period, trying to remember what I used to do outside of kids, even things I could do beside the kids. My own hobbies and creative pursuits. And it's been good for the kids to see me doing my own things and getting joy from my own things, a lot of which I could share with them. They could do art with me, and they could do, they love to bake with me. And, but yeah, it was definitely a period of figuring out where I fit into all of it.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I love when you mentioned sharing that with them, because for them to see adults doing things that they like to do, continuing learning and everything, that really, really hits home the whole idea of lifelong learning, right? That this isn't something they're doing as kids and we're doing something else as adults. This is a way of living your life. Right.
Absolutely. About 3 years ago now, I went and got certified to teach yoga. And that was a big thing. That was when my daughter was getting older and I was going through my, what do I do now?
Yes.
That was a big thing, I think, for them to see me devote time to something that I wanted to do in a way that, something else that made me happy, that was my own. And the kids did yoga with me, and they came to a lot of my classes, and it was fun. It was like you said, it's a good thing for them to see you doing, pursuing your own things. Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Question number 4. You are very well known for taking on parenting stories that are making the rounds on social media and then sharing a wonderfully fresh view of that situation through the lens of unschooling and gentle parenting. You recently wrote a blog post entitled "I'm Not the Meanest Mom," which has been spread all over the place. That I was so excited to see that. And it was in reaction to a Facebook post that was making rounds from a self-proclaimed meanest mom, in which she shared that when her children didn't say thank you to the server for their ice cream cones, she threw them away to teach them a lesson. Your list in your blog post of what children are actually learning in those kinds of situations was great, and I was hoping you could share that with us.
Well, my thing with those posts is that I can't wrap my head around how the general public seems to have such a disconnect between how parents treat their kids and how adults treat other adults. And they all praise it. Like in droves, they come and praise that behavior, but nobody takes a step back and really thinks about what it is that they're praising. I mean, if someone offered me a treat and then bought it and handed it to me, and then the way that I behaved, so they took it from me and threw it away, I wouldn't respect them. Everyone keeps saying, "Oh, they'll respect mom now." I wouldn't respect them. I'd be really ticked off. And I'd be ticked off. I'd be embarrassed. I would be humiliated. I probably wouldn't want to get ice cream from them again. And what I think people aren't seeing is, everyone says, well, they'll say thank you next time, and they might, but they're not saying thank you because they have gratitude. They're saying thank you because they don't want to get their ice cream thrown away. They have
fear.
It's total fear. It's parenting through fear is, you wouldn't treat, no one advocates for treating people that way in any other instance, you know, bosses or coworkers or spouses or any other relationship. But they seem to think that using intimidation and fear and bullying is really what it was. She bullied them.
Yeah.
So she was teaching them that if someone doesn't behave the way you want, that it's okay to bully them. And I don't understand why people don't see that. They're so wrapped up in, well, she was a mother, she needed to teach them, that they're not seeing it for what it is, which is bullying. And if they're learning anything from it, it's all negative. They're learning that it's okay to bully. They're learning that it's okay to parent with fear and intimidation and humiliation. And I do believe that parents who parent like that probably, they have good intentions, but I think that they're not realizing what they're actually teaching their kids. I want my kids to say thank you because they're thankful, not because they're afraid I'm going to throw away their treats if they're not.
Yeah, somehow it seems like because I know they've got a purpose. You know, they're not trying to do harm. They want, what they call a well-behaved child, and this is the tool they think. And I think, I don't know, it seems they might be choosing those kind of tools like they don't think the kids can think for themselves. Like it's like, it's the old, they're empty vessels to fill up, that their kids won't absorb the lessons that you're talking about from being treated that way, but they absolutely will. They're not, their brains are working. They're taking these actions and they are internalizing, how they feel from it and learning from the actions instead of from the words, right? She's, when you tell them, make sure you say thank you, and you want them to treat other people so nicely and respectfully, and yet through those actions, they're being treated so badly. It's the actions, I think, that really speak.
Definitely. That's what I talked a lot about in that blog post. I think our kids learn so much more from our actions than from our words. And of course, obviously have the conversations with them, but it's your actions. So, people aren't seeing the, there's a word, the hypocrisy in trying to instill a sense of being polite in your kids by treating them rudely. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I like to think of it as, when your words and your actions are in alignment, that's when you're building trust.
Right.
Because your kids trust that your actions will back up what you say. So all the messages are in the same direction rather than being opposed or hypocritical, right?
Right. And I think that part of the problem, too, is that there's sort of a desperation that people feel. They think that, kids these days, they're so entitled. And anytime they see someone, a parent doing something, they latch onto it just because they're doing something. But they're not realizing that what they're doing is negative. And then when they post about it and they say, oh, I'm the meanest mom, I did this and this and this and this, we feed it because so overwhelmingly the response they get is negative and positive. And the people like me who say, yeah, maybe this wasn't the best way to handle the situation. I get told, you're being too judgmental. You weren't there, or at least she stood up. Your kids are probably grateful brats, and it feels so backwards. And I don't know this woman, and it wasn't about her personally, but she made this public, very public. I know she's has millions of people who follow her. She very publicly said, "Here's what I did," And I think it's important that, some of us do say, maybe you could have handled it this way instead.
Yeah, seeing options.
Yeah.
That's great. Another question from your blog, question number 5. We're almost halfway done. You mentioned that one of the questions that you get a lot is, if I don't spank, what do I do? So I was curious how you answer that.
Yeah, it is a question I get a lot, and it's frustrating. People usually aren't happy with my answer because I think what they want is something immediate that they can do, that they can trade spanking for, like 1 for 1. Okay, if I don't spank, then I can take this specific action. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't really work that way, because with gentle parenting, you need to reframe the whole situation and change your whole mindset. And it does take more time to listen and to connect with your kids and to empathize with them and to provide alternatives. Spanking is immediate, and I think what people want is an immediate answer. And of course, there are things you can and should do, like particularly with toddlers. I know they're the ones that people struggle with the most when they do things like hit or throw or something like that. And yes, you intervene and you hold their hands and you tell them gentle hands, and you provide alternatives, but you don't trade something for the spanking. You have to put the time in. You have to stop. You have to connect with them. You need to listen to them. You need to empathize with them. And usually for toddlers, it's just a matter of growth and time and maturity. All the things that people punish their young kids for aren't even quote unquote bad behaviors. They're just age appropriate behaviors. It's normal. It's normal for toddlers to throw and to hit and to, dump out glasses of water. It's all normal exploration, and they get punished for it if you connect with them and help them explore the way they want to explore safely and keep everyone from getting hurt. But in terms of doing something instead of spanking, you just need to put the time in to make the relationship important. And once you have that relationship, everything else becomes easier because they trust you. They trust that you're not going to spank them or yell at them or treat them harshly when they do something. You're going to maybe stop the activity if they're doing something dangerous, but then you're also going to say, well, let's do this instead. And I always like to tell this story because when people come to me really frustrated, oh, my kid won't stop hitting or throwing, or my most spirited toddler, I'll say, the one who was the thrower and he was the hitter, and he was the one who he would find things he would like shove sandwiches into the VCR. And I mean, he was busy. The one kid who everyone, people say, well, some kids just need to be spanked. The one kid that people would have said would have fallen into that category. And we parented him gently through it all. He is the most laid back teenager now you would ever hope to meet. You would never know that he was that way as a toddler. I think you just need to love them through it. And you can't think of trading spanking for something else. You need to take, I tell people the first step always has to be to breathe, because it calms you down, it calms your voice down, it calms the kids down. You breathe, you address the immediate behavior that needs to be addressed. You offer alternatives. You empathize with them if they're upset because you've stopped them from doing something that was fun. And you give them alternatives. And then it really is just a matter of time and patience, I think. Because they grow up, and with consistency, they really do learn not to do those things. And then once you've done that, once they get past those young years, everything else is, my kids don't do things I would punish for, even if I did punish, because they have no reason to act out. We have a good relationship. Our home is peaceful. And I'm glad I never spanked. I never punished, because the proof is in the pudding, like they say.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I think that I forgot what the original question was now.
That's okay. I think you did a pretty good job of that. If I don't spank, what do I do?
Yes.
And yeah, the relationship, right?
The relationship.
And the time.
Yeah.
Putting the time in. Yeah.
Relationship, you equip yourself with the tools, you breathe, you listen, you empathize, and you model, you act, you show them through your actions how you act. And you don't sweat the small stuff, because it really is small stuff.
Yeah.
It really is.
Really is. That puddle of water is just fine.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, that's totally true. It seems like a lot of time in the moment, but oh my gosh, the payoff from investing that time in the relationship and empathizing with your child and being with them as they work through it, they naturally take on that, like, as you said, as they get older, they gain the skills just naturally to take over a lot of that and catch things before they happen, right?
Exactly. And I think a lot of sort of mainstream parenting advice, when they tell you steps of what to do and how to discipline, they're almost treating it like you're in a transaction with your kids instead of in a relationship. You do this action and you'll get this result, but it doesn't work that way, because they're humans, and you have to treat them like humans, not not like a transaction where you put in this input and you get this out. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Oh, that leads nicely into our next question. And that is, it's another idea around parenting without punishment that I hear about pretty often, and it's natural consequences. And for me, it's a bit confusing, because I regularly see examples of parents, whether it's online or, around in our community, of parents that almost seem to be setting up their kids for what they call natural consequences, almost wanting things to go wrong. But to me, if the parents have to set their kid up to fail, that seems artificial to me. I mean, that's not natural. So I was wondering what your perspective was on that.
I agree with you in that it's confusing, and I do see exactly what you say a lot. People will come on to some gentle parenting pages I'm on and ask a question. They'll be like, well, what's a natural consequence for this? What can I do as a natural consequence for this? And, well, if you have to think it up, it's really not a natural consequence. Then it becomes a punishment. I do think that there are ways, I do think that natural consequences are something, when it's something benign, that we can help our kids through. An example I use a lot, because it's just so basic, is like a toddler not wanting to put on a coat. And if it's not 25 degrees below zero, it's not going to hurt to say, okay, you don't have to wear your coat. I'll bring it in case you change your mind. And then if they get outside and feel, oh, it is cold, then they can put on the coat, and they've felt why you asked them to put on a coat in the first place. And you gave them the coat, so you're not punishing them. And then they're able they trust you, because they understand that you had a reason, and they understand that you're there with them to help them through it, instead of making them suffer and saying, oh, you should have worn your coat, and then just letting them be cold.
Yeah.
There are times, though, that natural consequences, you can, I don't know if save is the word, you can help them learn about natural consequences without having them go through the pain of actually experiencing the consequences. Like, as an example, my daughter, she loves stuffed animals, and she has tons and tons of stuffed animals, and we have a dog that chews up stuffed animals if they're left out. And she knows this, and we've talked about it, and I try to remind her, but she plays with them, and they're all over the house. And if I see a stuffed animal on the floor, some more punitive parents would be like, well, that's going to get chewed up, and then that's a natural consequence, and so that's how she's going to learn. But that's really, if I see it and don't do anything about it, then that's on me. That's just me being a jerk, really, and unkind. So that's when I can just pick it up for her and nicely say, I don't want this to get chewed up. And what happens with that is that they not only learn the consequences, but they learn about helping each other with the consequences. Because then I've had something that was left out somewhere and had one of the kids bring it to me and say, oh, I don't want this to get, wrecked or whatever. They do what it comes back to learning from your actions more than your words.
Exactly. Modeling, helping each other out as much as we can, right? That's so huge, I think, in relationships within your family. You're just showing them how we help each other out as much as we can. And, sometimes you don't see that stuffed animal in the corner. Nobody sees it, and it gets chewed up. Life, there's going to be so many times when nobody can anticipate or see what's coming, and things are going to go wrong. You don't have to set your kids up for those.
Exactly. And it's another example of people wanting to treat kids differently than they would other loved ones. If my husband had, using that same example, if he had left something somewhere that it could get ruined, or there was something outside where it could get rained on, I wouldn't see it and leave it there to teach him a lesson.
Yeah.
You don't do that to each other. Setting your kids up to fail is just, to me, it's just another example of, treating them with less respect than you'd treat other people. It's not a kind way to do it, because the fact is there are real consequences. There have been stuffed animals that have gotten chewed up that, haven't been noticed. I didn't know she left it out. She didn't remember she left it out. And that's unfortunately a real thing that happens. There are natural consequences, but you don't need to, it becomes punishment when you know it's going to happen and you don't stop it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Let's move on to question 7. With unschooling, we choose to actively help our children pursue their goals. We talk to them like we're a team, we're working together. So when they ask to do things together, we can often find a way to say yes, or some workable version. But sometimes things just don't work out. And oftentimes that's because some things just aren't under our control. So I'd love to talk with you about things we can say to our children when things don't quite work out and they're having a hard time.
Yeah, I think that's another area where people aren't really treating their kids as humans. They're almost expecting them to be robots. And when kids are upset about something or disappointed about something, it's okay for them to express that. It's okay for them to be disappointed. It's okay for them to cry. You see articles that tell you how to, I run into in response to one that was something like 5 ways to nip it in the bud when your kids are acting out or whatever. And the whole article was talking about a kid who was disappointed when they had to be told no. And the sort of mainstream advice is that, well, kids need to learn to hear no. And they're going to learn that because, like you said, there are going to be things that are outside of our control, and sometimes we'll have to say no. I think most unschoolers say yes as often as I can. And when I truly do have to say no, sometimes they're going to be disappointed, and that's okay. They're allowed to have those emotions.
Yeah.
My thing is, this is really sort of always my default in parenting, is putting myself in their shoes and how would I want to be treated in that situation. And I would want someone to empathize. Empathize is the big thing. You just want to feel heard, I think. You want to know that someone gets it. So, I would tell my kids, I'm sorry, it really does stink when, X, Y, Z happens. And I would want to tell them that, I hear what they're saying. I hear their frustration. I understand how they feel. I would want them to tell them that it's okay to feel. It really kind of creeps me out the way a lot of times we're advised to, stop the crying, stop the, like kids, you don't want kids to have emotions, and they can have emotions. It's good to have emotions and get those emotions out. I noticed that as adults, people apologize when they cry. Every time someone gets emotional about something, they'll start to cry and they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry. And I wonder if that's because as kids, they were so often told, stop crying. And so it was all sort of shoved in. And then we become adults who feel like emotions are something to not to show. So I want my kids to know that it's okay to have those emotions, and that I'm on their side no matter what it is, whether it's something that seems small as an adult. Sometimes, a kid will be really, really upset because they got the wrong color cup. Something that as an adult seems so little, but to a kid, it is so, so huge. To a little kid, it's so, so huge. And I want them to know that, I understand that thing was important to them, and that I'm sorry, and that I'm here to help them, that I'm on their side. And then finally, I would problem solve with them, help them figure out, well, we can't do this right now, but next week we can do this. Or how about if we, call this person and do this, figure out the next thing. You can't take away the disappointment in the moment, but then together you can plan and brainstorm and, look forward to the next thing. If it's a toy they want that you don't have the money for, you can save up the money. You can help them keep a list. You can figure out ways to let them know that what's important to them is also important to you, and that you'll help them find a way to get there. I think that in itself is huge, because people just want to be heard, and kids are no different. They want to know that what's important to them is also important to you, and that you get that, and that you're going to help them figure out a way to make it happen.
Yeah, I think there's that piece there at the end, about it helps them see that there's, another side, kind of, if you want to call it the light at the end of the tunnel, that once they experience that, you're helping them find that, over the years, they know, at least in conversation with my older kids now, they know that even when things are going really wrong and they're upset about something and they don't know what that plan is, they know that there will be time after, and something, they'll be able to move through it. It's not like the end of the world in the moment.
Right.
And I think, the other really big piece, I think, that can sometimes trip people up when you're definitely empathizing with them. And you pointed out, realizing that even if their emotions are a lot stronger than you think you would have in their place, or that you think is appropriate, whatever, those are valid, because that is how they're experiencing it. and not to, once you validated it, and then don't sit there twiddling your thumbs waiting for them to move on to the next step. It's join them where they are. And when they're ready to start looking and brainstorming other things that they can do to move forward, just doing it on their timetable instead of trying to pull them along on yours.
Absolutely. And sometimes there just needs to be a period of letting them be upset. My daughter was my daughter was upset because she had a sleepover she was really looking forward to, and something came up in the other family and they had to cancel. And she cried, and I asked her, I said, what do you need me to do? Do you want me to help you take your mind off it? Do you just need to be sad? And, she's 8, so she's not little. So she was able to tell me, she said, I just need to be sad today. And so I sat with her. She wanted me to be in the room with her, but she didn't want to really talk or play, or we sat on the couch, and she was sad. And that's what she needed from me right then, was just for me to let her be sad. And when she was feeling ready, then we talked about it, and then we were able to reschedule the play date, and all was well. But in that moment, my job was just to be there. And I think that parents a lot of times want to immediately fix, and you can't always do that. So when you can't immediately fix, then like you said, you need to just meet them where they are.
Yeah, that time is so important, and it can make us uncomfortable because we're not used to it. But I think it's a huge piece. I'd like to shift gears a little bit for these last couple of questions. You host the Free to Be Unschooling Conference in Phoenix, Arizona. I was wondering if you could share what inspired you to start that.
Sure. It's actually kind of funny. I shared this story at the first conference. When I first mentioned, maybe we should start our own conference, I was joking. And what happened was we had gone to Flo Gaskin's conference in San Diego for the 3 years that she had it. And when she decided not to do it anymore, we were really bummed that year, because it was something we had looked forward to every year. And we felt like there was a big gap in that time of year in this part of the country, and there was no more conference. And we were riding in the car and talking about it and saying, yeah, it's a bummer that conference isn't happening this year. And I said, we should just start our own. And totally offhanded like that. And my husband was like, we should. We checked with the kids. We wouldn't have done it if all 4 kids weren't on board, because it's a lot of, time and a lot of work. And we felt like it had to be a family experience. And the kids thought it was a great idea. And we didn't talk about it for very long before we were like, let's just do this. Mm-hmm. And it was, I think 18 months. We gave ourselves 18 months before the first one, when we had announced it. And I emailed some people I knew who could give me some advice. But other than that, we just jumped in and we just researched and we did it. And we got a really, really lovely response right away. People who were excited that we were doing it. And we just kept thinking, I hope we can pull this off. And like I mentioned earlier, we are big introverts, and we don't host parties. We don't have a lot. So the idea of us doing it was sort of funny, because it was so far outside of our comfort zone. But we were excited about it. And so we just jumped in, and the first year just went so well, and we got so much lovely feedback, and it was really exciting to know that we had put together this thing, and the speakers and all the people who came out and registered, and it was amazing. And we were so glad we did it. And even now, we're planning our 3rd year, and I still keep saying, that's so weird that we really did that. We started a conference and then it's in its 3rd year. But yeah, it's been amazing.
I was wondering if you could talk a bit about some of the things that an unschooling family might get out of attending an unschooling conference. What kind of feedback did you get from attendees? Do you get?
I think there are a lot of things. I think the biggest, one of the biggest ones is the social aspect, and not just social aspect is in seeing friends that you haven't seen for very long, and that part is great. One of the most rewarding things for me is seeing people, particularly teenagers. There's just something about it when you see them in the lobby, running across the lobby to hug their friends that they haven't seen.
Yeah,
that is a really cool feeling. So the social aspect, not just getting together and talking with, but being able to see in real life how other unschooling families operate, because some people don't live in an area where there's an unschooling community, and all their exposure is online, so they've never actually seen it in person. And I think see it in person is really powerful, to see the interactions between the parents and the kids and what it actually looks like in real life. I think that's really powerful, particularly for people who are new to unschooling and might have doubts. To be able to see it is really reassuring, which brings me to my next one. I think the biggest thing is for the people who, and this is the most the most positive feedback I think we've gotten, or the strongest feedback, is from the people who have had a spouse who maybe wasn't all the way on board yet, and who had a lot of questions and doubts, and were able to get their questions answered, and were able to have that light bulb moment when they see and it clicks for them. The fact that at a conference, we tried really hard to have a big mix of, really seasoned unschoolers and moms and dads and grown unschoolers. And I think the grown unschoolers, it was really powerful for some of the spouses to see how well these kids were doing, and the interesting things they were doing, and how successful they were, and how happy they were. And, they could see, wow, unschooling really does work. These are happy, productive kids who've grown up unschooling. And even the teens. I had one mom send me an email about her husband. He wasn't quite there yet with unschooling, and he listened to the teen panel, and afterwards they sort of hung out in the hallway, and he just asked his questions. He kept a notebook. He filled up a notebook all weekend with all the questions he asked and got answered. And the teens, they stood with him and they answered all his questions. And after that, she said that was what he needed to hear to sort of be convinced that unschooling was not just a valid option, but an awesome option, and that these kids were learning and happy and engaged, and that his fears, they didn't need to be afraid, because it really was a great way to learn and to live with your family. So that I think those have been the coolest things for us as the organizers, to hear these people who came to the conference, not really sure about unschooling, and 4 days later they left very confident in unschooling. That's really cool to know.
Yeah, I got goosebumps listening to your teen story. And really, I mean, the whole fact that he could, I bet it dawned on him that he was actually talking to the teens, right? That they were actually, answering his question.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the questions themselves, it was the actual interaction as well that I bet really helped him.
Yes. And one of those teens was my teen, who shoved things in the VCR as a toddler.
Exactly. All right, we have made it to question number 10, and I love asking this of all of our 10 question guests. Looking back now, what for you has been the most valuable outcome from choosing unschooling? So
this is the easiest question for me to answer, because there's obviously so many benefits to unschooling, and seeing the kids learn and seeing them love to learn and seeing them have freedom and being happy and not going through the angst that I see so many other kids go through. All of that is great. But for me, far and away, the best thing about unschooling has been my own relationship with the kids. And I know that obviously, regular homeschooled kids and public school kids, they can all have good relationships with their parents. But I think unschooling and radical unschooling in particular just lends itself to a relationship comes first in the whole unschooling journey. And that to me is, I have a wonderful relationship with all my kids from 19 down to 8. And I credit the unschooling for that. We live together, we work together, we operate as a family. And I couldn't imagine not having such a close relationship with my kids, as teens. The societal thing of, wait till they're teens. And
I know.
It's terrible. And I am enjoying my teens so much, just as they're so interesting, all the ages. But I'm finding for me that I just enjoy my kids more and more and more as years go on and as they get older and they get able to talk about different things and do different things. And they're my best friends. They are, even though society says you're not supposed to do that either. They are amazing. And we have such a close relationship. And, you go through different seasons and periods, and you go through times that are harder, but you work it out as a family. And the relationship is always first. And I couldn't ask for a better relationship with my kids. And that to me has been the biggest, the most valuable part of unschooling by far.
I love that. And I found the same thing too. When we first started, I had no idea, the relationships that would develop, but those relationships are going to last me for a lifetime. And they have just been the most powerful thing that's ever going to come out of it. But yeah, so that's great.
They are, it is. And I see sometimes the, all the focused on, being the meanest parent and everything. I do wonder what those relationships are going to be like in the future when you're spending this time now in such an us versus them mentality. I don't want to be adversaries with my kids. We're partners. Mm-hmm. And like you said, those are relationships that you're going to have for the rest of your life. And I look forward to it being strong when they're adults, but I'm also enjoying it right now, right at the ages that they're at. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, no, the teens were and are a great time too. Their kids are just awesome.
They are.
They're fun. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today, Jennifer. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, and before we go, where's the best place for people to connect with you online?
So you can find me at www.jennifermcgrail.com. And I'm also you'll find the links there to Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and Snapchat. I'm all over.
Perfect. Yep. And I will add that link to the show notes. Thanks again, Jennifer, and wishing all the listeners a wonderful day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. You might also like the backlist episodes at livingjoyfully.ca/podcast. You can also get your free Exploring Unschooling ebook at livingjoyfully.ca/exploring unschooling. If you'd like to connect, you can also find me on Facebook at Living Joyfully. Until next time, have fun living and learning with your family.